Hi, I'm Joe Walensky, and I put on the Writers UA event. So we have another one coming up in Denver at the end of March, the 28th and 29th, in cooperation with Metropolitan State University's Department of Journalism and Technical Communication. So we're happy to be doing that. And right now I'm talking with one of my longtime colleagues and associates, John Daigle. How you doing today, John?
I'm doing terrific, and we have a beautiful Technicolor blue Colorado sky going on. So it's cold though, but that's okay.
It's kind of what it's like here in Seattle, a little bit cold, but yeah, you're right down the street from the event. So for a
Yeah,
change, you don't have to do a lot of travel.
I know. This is a rare treat for me, believe me.
Well, as I mentioned, I've known you for a long time, so I know all about the things that you do, but why don't you talk a little bit about the nature of your work?
Sure. Uh, well, started back uh, at the University of Houston with a journalism degree. And with that, went into broadcast news. And after several years of that, got into the marketing communications side. And of course, I bet around 1995, when the web was getting going, uh, nobody really knew anything. I wonder if they still do, knew anything about the web. And so at the University of Texas, they uh, kind of had a big interest in that being a hub of the internet. And so I learned, basically from scratch how to build websites. And then I was looking around for a tool that would help me, put all this together. And I tripped over things like Help and then, of course, Adobe RoboHelp. Of course, back then it was another company. And then so over the years, I sort of grew with the web, basically. And it's just another communication tool, basically. Nothing fancy about that. And I just decided to kind of jump right in. And then about 10 years ago, the Metro State University here has, of course, a journalism technical communications program. So uh, they reached out to me to say, hey, we'd like to, instead of just teaching the theory of communication and all that, we'd like to have some practical sense of, what can you do to get a job with this? So I put together a couple of courses on multimedia, e-learning, and then one on tech writing and policies, procedures online, and that sort of thing. So that was sort of my entry into the academic world. And that's turned out to be very nice. And so, as a matter of fact, the first or one of the two sessions that I'm going to be working on here is one of them is a case study. I like case studies. I mean, there's just something so real about it, and you're not just sort of parroting some kind of marketing materials or something. You can kind of get into the real stuff. And
Yeah,
so I
the
decided,
title of that was a case history in saving lives with video e-learning.
right. And that sounds like a very dramatic title, which it is. But what happened was a student of mine in my Captivate class, I always have them do a class project, of course. And one of these students just did a terrific job on explaining blood transfusion of all things to somebody. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And so I was talking to him about it, and it turns out he was part of Donate Life, which is the folks around the country that take care of transplants and tissue donation and all of that kind of thing. Thus, that's how the Saving Lives comes into it. And so what happened was, he graduated, he got a great grade, obviously, and that was that. But a couple of years later, um, somebody called me from the National Donate Life outfit in Virginia and said, hey, one of your former students, we had wanted him to do this work for us, and he said he just didn't have time. And he said, hey, why don't you call my instructor? And so I said, okay. And so I never met them never gone there in person. And so for 2 years, I worked on their project virtually. So part of what I want to talk about is the challenges of working remotely and, some of the tricks that we've learned along the way. And then, of course, they referred me to someone else in Kansas City. And so just one thing's led to another. So today, during my session, I'll be talking a little bit about the things I learned and the mistakes I made and how folks can learn from, especially the use of video. I mean, video is so huge right now. I don't know about you, but it just comes up all the time. And it's just so fraught with technical issues. So that's
all right.
Kind of what I want to focus on that one.
Yeah, well, that'll definitely be a topic that a lot of us will want to jump into. And then you're going to be doing 2 talks. Another one's going to be techniques for customizing content delivery. So what can we expect from that one?
Right. Ever since I can remember, in creating online help and knowledge bases and what have you, is organizations have this dilemma where they have different employee groups, let's say, with different roles. You might have marketing and sales, and then you have a software development outfit. And of course, the software developer people could care less about all of the stuff having to do with, get them while they're hot sales information. And conversely, the sales people could care less about the techie stuff the software people are doing. So, and yet a lot of the knowledge base is shared between both groups. And so how, when they do a search or look through the material, how do they find what they want? And of course, the rising feature there is the concept of filtering. And it's been on the web in terms of, merchandising and what have you quite a bit, but it's finally, I'm surprised how long it took to work its way into online knowledge bases. And finally, 2 tools. One is Captivate Flare, and the other is Adobe RoboHelp. Those 2 seem to have gotten the memo and decided, hey, we need to come up with some ideas to help authors take some of the mystery out of creating filters. So I'm going to talk about Captivate Flare and show some examples of their approach to search filtering, for example, which works really well. And they use a little bit different technique than RoboHelp, so I thought it might be nice to sort of compare and contrast the 2 approaches. And so Adobe RoboHelp, which is something I of course teach and know a lot about, has yet another take on how to implement that. And so this way, I can show whether it's different roles, different products, they can separate filter the search. So that's the general idea there, to show some of those techniques.
Yeah, well, that's going to be really interesting to hear you talk about that. We're also going to have a session where we just do table topics about individual help authoring tools, so we'll probably get your input on that. And
sure.
Yeah, so thanks for taking the time to go through this with me. Good to see you, and I'll see you again in just a few weeks when I get to Denver.
Great. Look forward to it. Thanks a lot.